Hey everybody, this is Doug Dawson. You listen to the Caffeinated Campaigns podcast, the show where we talk about the most impactful learnings and failures for anyone that touches leads, conversions, and revenue. Today I'm talking to Brendan Aronson, serial entrepreneur and investor. Thanks for talking to me, Brendan.
Thanks so much for having me on today. I'm really excited about this.
All right. So we like to get started to give a little background of who you are so the folks listening know where you're coming from and who they get to learn from today.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'm originally from Baltimore, and I went to the Naval Academy for undergrad, and then I served for 6 years as an infantry officer in the Marine Corps. I did deployments to Japan and to Iraq, and then got out of the Marine Corps in 2018. Did a very brief stint in New York on Wall Street doing investment banking. Got an MBA at the Wharton School in Philadelphia, and then I've launched a couple of companies since then. My first company, which is how we met, was Paintru. Paintru is a
Yeah.
custom artwork company. We take people's favorite photos and have them expertly hand painted by a professional artist. Make really nice gifts for special occasions. It's a super fun business. During the second year in business, we started painting fallen service members and gifting those paintings to the families, which was a really moving thing that we were doing with our business. It was very impactful on me and my co-founders, and it sort of spurred this idea for my second startup, which I started earlier in 2022, which is called the Military Veteran, which I know is extremely catchy branding, uh, difficult to forget. But
Yeah.
we really wanted to find a way to help our community. When you transition out of the military and into your civilian life, you lose a sense of identity and a purpose. You lose a tribe of peers and mentors who are invested in your success, and then you lose the financial security that comes from serving in the U.S. military. So we help remedy and make that transition easier by providing really high quality content, community, and careers for transitioning service members. And then on the flip side of the equation, we help employers hire the best military veteran talent to run their businesses. So that's been a super fun initiative. I'm also a venture capital investor with Context Ventures. We invest primarily in military veteran entrepreneurs as well as consumer businesses. So wearing a lot of different hats, but really enjoying the entrepreneurial journey and excited to be here talking marketing and revenue with you today.
Yeah, that's a lot going on, man. I remember when we first talked, like, what, 5 years ago? It was just Paintru, and then boom, you just blown up since then, man.
I mean, it's a lot of different things going on. I would say I spend the vast majority of my time on this new business, the military veteran. Part of that is
Yeah.
creating content, which is also symbiotic with the investor role as well. So yeah, I mean, a lot of these things fold into each other really really well, and they're sort of symbiotic. They work together really well.
And I guess that's what you have to do to make sure that you can run more than one business at the same time. They all have to fit together some way, so it's not like complete context switching.
That's right. Yeah, totally.
All right. So getting to the meat of the conversation. That's Brendan, everybody. So we love to talk about the top three most impactful learnings, failures that you've done in the last, and all the things you've had in the last few years as it turns to marketing and growth. So we want to help people sort of not make the mistakes that we did, shorten the time to value. You help those who come next.
Yeah, I would say the most impactful lesson that I've learned in business is about content. So there's this concept of creating leverage. I wrote about this week on my newsletter, Retained Learnings, which is, leverage in physics. A lever allows you to apply a greater amount of force on an object, right? So you can lift a really heavy object using a lever and a fulcrum. In finance, leverage is used, to refer to debt, which allows you to amplify the outcomes of an investment, right? If you use debt, you can amplify the returns on buying a house or a business. That's how the entire private equity industry works, et cetera, right? Well, digital leverage is this idea that I've shamelessly stolen from Nicholas Cole and Dickie Bush, which
Yeah.
is, how do you amplify the effectiveness of whatever you're good at? And I found myself having these conversations over and over and over again with transitioning military veterans, giving them the same advice about how they should build their network, how they should think about a civilian career. And so I finally started creating content about it at the beginning of this year, which attracted an audience and some engagement and some interest, and morphed its way into a business over time. So to me, content marketing works. It's incredibly effective if it's done well, and I think that's been one of the most impactful points that I've learned about revenue generation, about business, and about marketing in the last few years. Um, as you're thinking about content, most of my the other points that I'll make pertain to this. So number one, if you're not investing in creating high quality content, I think you should be. The returns are really dramatic and a long right tail. When you're thinking about a content strategy, I think about volume and variety. So this is point
Mm-hmm.
number two. Volume and variety. So you want to create a lot of different types of content. Vary whether you're writing, whether you're doing video, audio, try all sorts of different formats to figure out what you're best at. Vary your messaging as well, because you have an idea of what might stick, but you don't actually know what's going to resonate really well with your audience. And so by varying both the format and the content itself, you're able to find what works over time. As you sort of hone in on messages that work, you can sort of narrow your focus and double down your efforts on the things that do resonate with your audience. But I think it's really important when you're starting out to try a lot of different things and talk to a lot of different types of audiences, saying different messages in different ways. So volume and variety, I think, is really important. The other piece, so the third most impactful business lesson around marketing is to be sure to write for others and not yourself. So a lot of amateur content creators and marketers will write things how they want to receive them. When I write, I have a tendency to write like long. I'm talking a lot right now, so you can probably tell I write the way that I speak, which is too much. But I write and I use words that make sense to me. But you always want to make sure that you're writing and your content is really approachable. You don't want to write for yourself. You want to write for your audience. So I think that's a skill set that can be developed over time. I think military veterans are actually great at this because we're used to translating sort of, strategic initiatives into, easily digestible snippets for, the masses. I think teachers are probably really good at this. So if you ever taught someone something, I think this is something that you're probably already good at. I've learned a lot from you, so I know that you're excellent at this. But those are sort of my three most important marketing points, I think.
Okay. Now, to expand upon that on a little bit, in your experience here, do you think it's and this is a bit of debate with the people that I'm working with and the people I'm talking to, is that is it more impactful to sort of build the brand of your business or build the brand of you? Because it's hard to do both, and people are sort of jaded on the business. But then if you build a brand around you, then you can't separate this inbound leads from it. So it's like, what do you think around that?
I think it really depends on the business itself. I would say in the early innings, you are the business. Like in the first few years, there is no difference between like you as a person and the business. I think
Okay.
I think where people run into a lot of issues actually is when they're first starting out, they try and emulate the biggest players. So like, um, they try and assume a brand voice that is like Coca-Cola, right? Like Coca-Cola says nothing,
Yeah.
and they say it a lot on a lot of different channels to every single person, and they're everything to everyone. But that's because they've been around for like 100 and something years, and everybody knows who they are.
Yeah.
So all they need to do is put in your mind Coca-Cola. They just need to say it, and you will want a Coke sometime this week, right? So
Yeah.
that is never going to work for you starting out. It's just not, because nobody has heard of your brand. The average person sees or interacts with like something like 4,000 brands a day, right? Whether it's like billboards on the
Wow.
street, it's like wild number, or like you open the fridge and there's like some sort of brand of like ketchup or something, right? Like, so you're interacting with this massive volume of different companies. And so if you are telling me, oh, I'm a company that does X, Y, and Z, I'm just not going to listen because I have no relationship with your company. I've
Yeah.
never worked with you. I don't know who you are. I see 3,999 companies just like you every day. But as a person,
Yeah.
I do know you. Like I know you, Doug, right? Like you have helped me in the past, and we've had like a great business relationship before. So if you tell me something, I'm much more likely to believe it. So I think that separating those two things out in the
Okay.
early innings is actually a big mistake. As you continue to
Ah.
grow over time and prove your value as a business, you hope that the business itself creates brand equity that takes off. Like I couldn't tell you, I used like Dropbox earlier today, right? Like I don't have a personal relationship with the founder, but I would be willing to bet in the very early innings it was very much like the founder, him or herself saying, "Here's our product. Here's what it can do for you," as opposed to now I have a relationship with the brand, but that's because they've been around for a long time and they've spent hundreds of millions of dollars on marketing.
Gotcha. Okay. You know what? That's a very good point, actually. I was talking to a SaaS company, and this is where it always sort of differentiate, but also things are the same. A founder of an e-commerce company, a service brand, or whatnot, they always think they're different in the beginning than tech companies because it's a short-term product, it's not a subscription, and there's a lot less relationship building. But I found some of the biggest e-commerce brands like up and coming running, their founders are everywhere. Like the onset of UGC and user generated content coming from the team and from the companies, it comes real from a person. Just like you said, developing those relationships is extremely important. Um, another question that popped in my brain while you were talking, the importance of content marketing and building the audience, is how do you find best to keep your audience engaged and continue to nurture them? Because I always like to say that when you have a social media audience, it's sort of rented. It's not really owned because at any point in time, somebody can close your profile. You lose everybody. So how are you going about taking that content marketing strategy, developing, I would say, top of funnel on social media, and then moving it back down into somebody that you can develop a relationship with?
So I actually think this is a great question. I actually think it starts with the bottom of the funnel and then
Oh,
builds up from there. And I think people like naturally do this, right? Like think about like a sales process. Like if you like
okay.
you're going to start a business doing something, the first people you're going to call are people that you know who need this product or service. Like you have
Yeah.
established these relationships with people. You're going to call them up on the phone and say like, "Hey, you know me, I know you. I started a business. Like, do you need help with X, Y, or Z? Right? With content marketing or with whatever, right?" And
Yeah.
so, and you're going to refine that sales pitch on an already warm audience because they already know you from previous experience. As you refine
Yeah.
that sales pitch and find what resonates, then you start grabbing a megaphone and holding it to these sales calls, right? And you say, "This
Yeah.
is what I'm doing for a client. Check out what's going on over here. This is my advice for people who can't afford my services," right? You're just giving this value away for free. Um, and so I sort of
Yeah.
think of like starting at the bottom, refining the messaging and the sales pitch, and then adding the microphone in sort of like layers going up. I'm not sure if that like answered your question exactly, but I mean the other takeaway is like just keep adding value. Like you have things to teach
Yeah.
people. It doesn't always have to be the same exact topic. This is why it's great to like be an individual content creator as like a human being, is that you're multifaceted, right? Whereas like a brand can
Yeah.
only scream, "We do X, Y, and Z." You as a person do all kinds of things. So you
Yeah.
should be open to showing off those different sides of yourself, I think, which can be, really impactful and help to build like an authentic relationship with the audience.
No, that definitely did. I was curious because on one side of thing, it's the idea generation of always coming up with something to say on a regular cadence, and the other side of thing is not becoming stale. But it sort of brings up what you said earlier about testing with variety, testing with ideas, testing with things, and combining. Hey, I'm a person that happens to like basketball, but I also talk about this marketing thing. Today I'm going to talk about basketball and have release. Hey, I was on the basketball court thinking about this, and boom, I had a marketing epiphany. So it's like combining it all together into sort of an ecosystem of content is pretty, yeah, impactful.
Well, I think that other people also overestimate the amount of like their own repetitiveness. Like
Okay.
to me, I say the same thing over and over again. I say it all the time, all day, every day, and I know exactly what I say because I say it on the phone, I say it via my newsletter, I say it on Instagram, I say it on LinkedIn, right? And it's like the same message over and over and over again, and it's like I say it until I'm blue in the face, but on the receiving
Yeah.
end, you're not receiving every single one of those impressions. Like you follow my content. How many times this week have you
Yes.
seen anything that I've put out?
Man, probably two or three.
Okay,
And besides that, I've had to go to your page and look for
that's
it.
right. Like I've put out, you know, 7, 8, 9, 10 pieces of content this week, and you've only seen a couple of
Well,
them,
there you
right?
go.
So you
Yeah.
have to say something a lot of times. The average person will not remember something that you say or will not remember your brand until you've interacted with them 8 to 10 times. You have to have 8 to 10
Wow.
impressions to actually have someone remember who you are or your brand. Otherwise, it's like it never even happened, right? And so you have to say the
Yeah.
same thing. My name is Brendan. I help people hire veterans. You have to say that 8 to 10 times before people start thinking, you know, about you and your brand in that way. Which, so like, even if you're just grabbing the megaphone to say the same exact thing over and over and over and over again, that's like really, really valuable actually, because otherwise people, it'll be in one ear, out the other. Um, what
All
matters,
right.
I think, in marketing, especially in content marketing, is the frequency of the impressions. So, how often are you occupying mind share? And then the quality of those impressions. So, if you are teaching me something actively and you're watching a video of me presenting something for like an hour, that's a really high quality and like long impression. Like, that's going to stick with you for a very long time. If you just see my name like
Yeah.
flash
Yeah.
briefly and quickly and you didn't really learn anything, you're probably not going to retain it very much at all. So, the quality really matters, and then the frequency. Like if you see my name flash over and over and over again for, you know, every day for a year, you're not going to forget it, right? So I think about both of those two things and trying to dial both of them up. Um, I think that can be a helpful framework as well.
Okay. And you maybe just think of something. I think Justin Welsh, he's a big guy on LinkedIn nowadays, said that with sort of combining what you said earlier about the average person interacts with 4,000 brands a day, with your own personal brands, like nobody's gonna remember what you said last week.
Totally.
So if or the week before, and definitely not last year. So your audience is only the most like top 1% is really gonna remember what you say on a regular basis. So you can just repost the same content. People think it was brand new, and not to mention the people that you've added since you post that content before. They all just show up. All right.
100% true.
Yeah. So the last thing I sort of want to connect is, could you walk me through how your posting journey turned into a business? Because like that's like the dream of a lot of people that are on the internet. And I want to turn to a business, and you've actually done it. So how did it? Where did you sort of talked about it a little bit, but where did ideas for content start pumping up? And then if you can, where did the business opportunities start pumping up, and how do you sort of like monetize this whole process?
Yeah, I just started writing about the things that I knew about. I was writing to my like younger self, which I think is like a great writing prompt that some people will adopt. And I also had these conversations all the time where I was providing free value, and it was like, let's just do this more broadly and make it simpler, so that so that people know what I think, and I don't have to
Yeah.
like keep saying the same thing over and over again. Ironically, I'm just saying the same thing over and over again still, but now it's in like
Yeah.
publicly and digestible format.
Yeah.
Um, so that's sort of how it started. I mean, and the inception for it was that idea of like, look, like digital leverage, man. Like,
Yeah.
add, you know, you want to take the same information that you're already conveying, but do it more effectively with scale. That's how you do it. Now, as far as how it turned into a business, I think this part is sort of like, you come to this by studying business a lot and like by reading case studies, and like there are only so many ways to monetize different things. Like there's a
Yeah.
lot of different business models, and there's like a lot of different things that you can study. But when you read enough case studies on business, you start to recognize patterns.
Mhm.
And so, like our audience, the thing that they need the most is to get like a job. I would never charge them for the advice
Yeah.
that I give them because
Yeah.
I want to help them. They're not in a position to pay, a really premium price point. So that part is like, how do you help people that can't necessarily pay? It's like, well, there are all of these companies that would love to hire them, who can pay and will pay a premium price point for really high quality talent. Um, and so you think about, how do you monetize helping those companies do that? There's really only a handful of ways that you can do that. And so you try all those different ways. So we tried in-person events. We sold sponsorships. We learned a lot from doing that. We are going to continue doing that in 2023. It is a revenue generating activity. It is super, super meaningful and helpful for the veterans that show up in person. I think it is like, it grants authority, I think, which is helpful.
Yeah.
Because the speakers that were able to come out because they want to help other transitioning veterans are, really high quality. So it's
Yeah.
good for the brand. It's good for the people. It's just like fun, frankly. Like, I love sitting in a room of hundreds of military veterans and telling them, like, I know how you feel. It's going to
Yeah.
be okay. And like, you have a lot to offer a civilian employer. So just take a deep breath and recognize your value. I would do that all day for free anyway. So if we can
Yeah.
have employers help sponsor those events, then that's excellent. And then we help do individual placements. So if a company needs to hire a veteran, or needs to hire someone to run their business, we will preach until we're blue in the face. Hey, there's this group of people who are military veterans who can make a real impact on your business and who can help make it a lot easier to run your business, more enjoyable for you. They are go-getters. They are hardworking. They're incredibly bright and driven. They're mission oriented. Like, come hire them and we'll help you find the right ones for your business. So that's also how we monetize. That's a business model that has existed for a long time.
Yeah.
So yeah, not everything has to be a really unique or novel business model. There are also just like better and worse business models, right? Like, and better and worse business models for different kinds of people wherever they are in their lives. So, um, yeah, I feel like once you start figuring out or thinking about things through the lens of, how do I monetize this? How can I make a living off of this? How can I turn this into a business and start selling? You do sort of like see the patterns and recognize that there are just like better and worse business models that exist, and try and,
Yeah.
align yourself with better business models, customers that can pay a high price point for a high quality service. That's always really
Yeah.
great and helpful. If you can have a high quality, high margin product, super helpful for your business, right?
Yeah.
Um, are you dealing with like larger average contract values? Or are you going to have to sell like a million, something very small? The easiest way to make $1 million is probably to buy something for like $100 million and sell it for like $101 million. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
As opposed to selling like a million things for $1. It's like, you
Yeah.
got to find a million buyers. So it's a lot.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
so how can you kind of like apply that same concept of like leverage to the business model itself? Is like,
Yeah.
I think that can be pretty helpful. It oftentimes involves just finding great customers
Mhm.
who have a very significant need that you can address very specifically.
Gotcha. So we had the passion. Passion took off, and then, like you said, rather than find some type of innovative way, what are ways that people have monetized this passion before, and how can I do that as well?
Yeah, I mean, um, I think that's right. I think there are innovative business models that exist, and people invent innovative business models, which I think is fantastic. If you can do that, then that's great. I think where people run into trouble going down that route is like, they'll invent a solution in search of a problem, which is
Yeah.
it's a savage way to
Backwards.
be. Yeah, it's savage. I
Yeah.
mean, and I think that's a byproduct of the fact that like the way that we teach entrepreneurship is like, you're listening to a podcast, it's like 30 minutes, and it's like, well, how did this business come to be? And it's like, dude, it took like months and months, or maybe even years, to like iterate my way into the right kind of thing. And then it was really obvious when it started to work.
Yeah.
And like, you hear about it on a podcast, it's like, oh, well, I was like walking home and I had this great idea, and then I launched the business and it was super successful. And it's like, that never happens. I've never heard of that like actually happening in my
No.
life. Most people are
Yeah.
like overnight successes, like 10 years in the making. So
Yeah.
So, so I think we do a disservice by focusing so much on like, oh, this brilliant idea came to me, and then because of that, everybody's like in search of this brilliant idea that will change everything, and um, it's like being in search of a winning lottery ticket. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, yeah, I get it. Yeah,
it's
it's
possible, but
the odds are against you.
exactly.
So I mean, what I took from that is that instead of searching for a winning idea, and search for an unsolved problem.
Yeah, I mean, like, ideally, how are like you specifically well positioned to start a business to help people? Like, what
Yeah.
experience do you have? Right? What is the network that you already have? Right?
Mm-hmm.
If you have a network of people that are like, say, salespeople, like 500 salespeople at tech companies, it's like, why don't you try and help these people? Like, you obviously know them well, right? Like, you know
Yeah.
their problems. Like, you can call them all day long and say, hey, remember me, I've actually got this thing that can help you. Like,
Yeah.
so focus on like, who do you know that has like budget that can pay you for things, and then figure out what their problems are and how to solve them. It's basically it. I mean, the other book I would recommend
Yeah.
for people, you sort of mentioned the idea of like building an audience and then monetizing it. I mean, I assume you've read the book, The Minimalist Entrepreneur.
Yeah.
It's just such a great read. I'm a big fan
It
of it
is.
for two reasons. He kind of lays out this approach to entrepreneurship, which I think is like much more organic and natural than like, in business school, we were taught go raise a bunch of venture capital money, right, for like an idea. And then you're taking these like really long shot bets.
Yeah.
Uh, the book is very different. It's the exact opposite approach. He actually had raised venture capital and then stepped back from the business and then, got back to it. And the idea is like start with an audience that you know first, figure out their problems, monetize. I think the book is brilliant because the blueprint that he lays out is like doable. It makes sense. It focuses on like leveraging your own strengths as like an individual, and then if you think about it from sort of a meta perspective, it's a brilliant book because it is his own marketing funnel in action. Like the book is a piece of content marketing
Yeah.
for him as an entrepreneur, because the bottom of the funnel, what he's hoping that you'll do is become a content creator and monetize your content by using his product, which is Gumroad, right? Which is like this tool that allows content creators to monetize. So it's brilliant for a number of reasons. Like,
Yeah. It
uh,
is.
I just think it's excellent. And it like took a second for me to recognize like, oh, duh, this is like part of this guy's marketing funnel for his own business. Like, of course, this is like, that's why it's such a great piece of content. So
Because it connects directly to how he monetizes.
that's exactly right. Yep.
Great. All right, Brandon, it's been awesome. I like to wrap it up with a bit of a personal question, uh, and then we'll end the call here. But if you had 3 years to live, and then it was it, what would you hope to accomplish professionally and personally?
Professionally, I mean, 3 years is such a short timeline.
It is.
Um, I think I would want to host an in-person event with like 10,000 people at it.
Okay.
Right? Like, I mean, I don't know. I love the in-person events that we do. They're super fun, and I like being able to like help transitioning veterans. And like, my initial reaction to this was like, how could I help as many veterans as possible?
Yeah.
And sort of like a lot of those things center around these in-person events. So I think that would be like sort of like a dart against the wall of like, yeah, I would want to host like a massive event for transitioning veterans to provide
Yeah.
like maximum value all at once. And then on the personal front, I would just want to double down on my existing relationships and make sure that that I was being, the best possible friend, partner, business partner, and every other relationship, son, brother, etc., for the people that I care about.
That's good. That's good. That's a whole lot more selfless than some of the other people have said.
Well, what are some of the other answers that you've got? I'm curious.
Man, I've gotten. I want to create a global brand that that everybody knows, which is all the middle line. They said, hey, I have these dreams that the guy was like, well, of course I want to spend time with my family, but I have these personal things that I want to accomplish
Totally.
that are a bit important. So it's like Yours is like, hey, I want to help everybody, and then everyone's like, you know what? I have this awesome something I want to do for me, and then we'll get to the other people too.
Yeah, I mean, I do have like a lot of personal aspirations, of course, and I think it's like very natural for people to have. I mean, you should have like personal goals and aspirations. Like that's a very
Yeah,
important driving factor behind like your life.
yeah,
Um, but like the things that you're actually going to value at the end of the day are all going to be relationship driven. A hundred
yeah,
percent of the things that you are thinking about on your deathbed are 100% of them are going to be relationship driven. So it's like you're not going to take the money with you, and like your like legacy or whatever, like air quotes here, is just going to be gone in like some length of time, whether it's the moment that you die, whether it's 100 years from now, whether it's 1,000 years from now. Like no one's going to remember you in like 5 or 10,000 years. I guarantee it, if the human race is even still around. So like
yeah,
the idea of like legacy is sort of like, I mean, it's ridiculous, right? Like
yeah. It's
so
fleeting, unnecessary.
yeah, exactly. So it's like focus on just like making the impact that you can while you're here on like other people's lives, because that is truly the scoreboard that you're going to use at the end of the day anyway.
That is valid. That is extremely valid. Extremely valid. All right. Well, thank you, Brendan. I appreciate your time. Appreciate all the insights that you've given us, and we will see you guys next time on Caffeinated Campaigns.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.